Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. My name is Isaac Mawar. First and foremost, I want to say call Halayim Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai Bahashem Harakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, GMS, aka 71319, which I say 71319 as a way to say that I'm not in GMS, but I still give double honors. Shalom to the Bakiyar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered throughout the four corners of the earth due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people will come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So this is not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah in his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Shah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. I suppose that you could refer to this as foreshadowing, because we know according to the scriptures that the beast is going to turn on the whore. This is from RT.com, stands for Russia Today. It says the EU, or European Union, can no longer consider the United States a ally, ex-bloc foreign policy chief. So those are weighty words, and they're prophetic. Let's get to the source, which it's entitled The Doom of Babylon, which we know Babylon today is America. It's not Iraq. This is Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore. Now that great whore is speaking about America. Mistress of witchcrafts, right? Which is also comparable to Nineveh. This is Nahum chapter 3, verse 1. It says, Woe to the bloody city, which woe means destruction, and America is a bloody city. All you have to do is look and research, man, concerning the atrocities that this damn devil has committed and built America on blood, right? This is Numbers chapter 35, verse 33. So you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood, which life is in the blood, it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So that's a mark on this damn devil, man. So his blood has to be shed. So he's already set up for the ultimate loss. Verse 34 says, defile not therefore the land which ye shall inhabit, wherein I dwell. For I, Yahweh, dwell among the children of Yasha'Allah. Right. But Esau, what did he do? He raped, robbed, and murdered. Why do you think they have something called the Trail of Tears? And, I did some research dealing with a particular city, and it was built on the blood of you Gadites. They slaughtered you. They raped your women, and they slaughtered you and put you under subjection, man. And then what? Now, in this day and age, they're all proud. Oh, this is such a distinguished small town. The Most High is going to destroy you so-called white people whose line goes back to Esau. Mind you, not all so-called white people are Edomites. But this is Genesis chapter 49, verse 19. It says Gad, which the tribe of Gad is you so-called indigenous of America. And the reason why I always say indigenous now is because it seems like that's what, these true Gadites like to be referred to as. It says a troop, which is dealing with the cavalry. You go into, that history. We know that history well because that's the history that Esau arrogantly promotes in his education system. Shall overcome him. Right. So those troops, it did overcome Gad. But what it says, but he shall overcome at the last. The last meaning the last times. And we're in the last times, man. We're in the last days. Right? And all of Israel is going to overcome our accuser. Going back to Nahum chapter 3, verse 1, it says, woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery, which is synonymous to, can't even think, is it 49? It might be 17. I forget. Let me see. 17. Yeah, it's Isaiah 47. I'm just queuing it up. But anyway, going back to Nahum chapter 3, verse 2, it says, verse 1, woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. And pretty much that's what Esau has been doing since he came back into power during the Renaissance. He's been deceiving the world, ultimately to lead them to, as it says in the scriptures, the battle of Harmageddon or Armageddon. Um, quick. Talks about Satan being loosed from his prison. This is Revelation chapter 20, verse 7. And when the 1,000 years are expired, they expired um, beginning of the Renaissance between 1350 to 1500s. It says Satan, which Satan just means adversary. It's not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. It's talking about Esau. Shall be loosed out of his prison. Mind you, he was under subjection under the Israelites in Europe, as those Israelites called themselves the Moors. Esau wasn't in rule during the Dark Ages. He was under subjection. But they'll have you believe now that they were all these different civilizations, man. Verse 8, it says, and shall go out to deceive the nations. So this links up to that city that's full of lies, because that's what Esau has been doing. He's been deceiving these nations. It says, which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, which is the same thing, which this is speaking about Russia, the land of Gog, because those Edomites that rule Russia occupy that land today. It says to gather them together to battle for World War III. But within World War III, the Battle of Harmageddon, the mountain of troops, which was going to be fought in the Levant, around that Saudi Arabian area. Says the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. There's going to be a lot of military, So the point was that he went to deceive the nations. So going back to Nahum chapter 3, verse, let me see. I could just start at the top. I'm going to just start at the top. This is a lament for Babylon, which is referring to now as America. This is Isaiah chapter 47, verse 1. Come down and sit in the dust, which the dust represents confusion. O virgin, and the reason why it's a virgin because it's never been touched by war on the homeland, right? Daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground. There is no throne, right? Because America is going to be taken out of power. O daughter of the Chaldeans, which the Chaldeans represent, the rich elite bankers, who people call the Illuminati, that came out of Britain, that set up this corporation called America, right? It says, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate, because people are going to, or nations are going to start seeing America as it's getting exposed for what it really is. Verse 2, it says, take the millstones and grind mill, uncover thy locks. make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers, right? Because their secrets are being made bare, you know. And then, also some say that uh, the nature of men is changing into women, and that's true. It says thy nakedness, which represents, your wickedness, shall be uncovered. And that's why we're able to do videos entitled, This Is Why We Call You the Devil. Because due to the internet, the unicorn, right, we're able to uncover all your wickedness on a massive scale. And that's why they said, and they regretted that they came up with the internet in the first place. It says, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. So when Yahweh Shah returns to earth, he's going to be in an angelic body, man. That's all powerful, indestructible. As for our Redeemer, Yahweh of hosts, which is Yahweh armies, is his name, the Holy One of Yashar'Allah. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. So this same Lady of Kingdoms is the same here in Revelation chapter 17, verse 1, when it speaks about the great whore. And it also continues to say that sitteth upon many waters. Now, you'll have to go down to I'm going to start at verse 14, right? Because it also links up with Yahweh Shai coming to take vengeance. So going back to Revelation chapter 17, verse 14, it says, these shall make war with the Lamb, which is, Esau's military and, militaries of the world, and you could also, as a precept, go to Second Ezra, the 13th chapter, right? It says, and it came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night, and lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. Now, this is talking about the atmosphere. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven, which a precept will be Psalms the 68th chapter, where it talks about the chariots of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. It says, and when he turned his countenance to look, which precept, Revelation, the first chapter, the 7th verse, everything trembled that was under him. All things trembled that were seen under him. Which, I don't need Revelation. I'll get that scripture real quick. This is Revelation chapter 1, verse 7. It says, behold, he cometh with clouds. What those clouds represents are chariots, but this world only calls them UFOs or UAPs. It says, and every eye shall see him, right? Going back to what was read here, no, in Second Ezra, all things trembled that were seen under him. Because people are going to be afraid. It's beyond what they are going to be expecting, right? Going back to Revelation 1 and 7, it says, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. So those same military men that pierced him and, did things that they did onto him 2,000 years ago are back here in the regeneration, because the Bible doesn't say specifically reincarnation, which means back in the flesh. Regeneration meaning back in the gene. It says, "And all kindreds of the earth shall well because of him, even so, amen." So kindreds is another word for nations. Everybody's going to be, going crazy. So going back to 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 4, it says, "And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth felleth when it filleth the fire," because he's going to be shooting what the apostles described as lasers. It says, "And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men." Now these are these air forces scrambling their jets, men on the ground loading sorties, right? If you know a little bit of the jargon that they use, which, I'm an avid fan of fighter jets and flying, because that's one of the things I wanted to be low key when I was growing up, was a fighter pilot. But I got discouraged because I wasn't good at math, so I like to play Ace Combat. I played them all. It says, "Out of number from the four winds of the heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea," which is just talking about the atmosphere, or the heavens, the waters, the Shemayim, right? "But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain." And when you even look at 3i Atlas, it looks like a mountain, right? It says, "And flew up upon it." So this chariot that he's going to be on, because he's going to be standing on top of it, is going to look like a great mountain, man. "But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight," or dared fight. The Most High is going to put the spirit in these, fighter pilots to engage in battle, just as you've seen in the movie Independence Day. It says, "And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. But only I saw that he went out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests." Those are the lasers, man. "And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude," all those fighter jets, military craft, "which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one." So all of them getting burnt up, "so that upon a sudden of a innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid." So going back to Isaiah chapter 47 and 6, it says, "I was wroth," which to be wroth meaning to be angry. So Yahweh Hashem Yahushua was angry with us, with my people. "I have polluted my inheritance," and he did that by allowing his inheritance, his people, to be trampled over by the Gentiles. It says, "And giving them into thy hand." Specifically, well, we were in all these nations' hands. But now we're in Esau's hands. All right. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. They put us in hardcore slavery, man. A wicked slavery at that. And, uh, a lot of the things that they did, they swept under the rug. But now the Most High is allowing the truth to come out, synonymous to the earth revealing its dead. Verse 7, it says, and thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever. And they think their houses is going to continue forever, going back to the book of Psalms. So that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, to your mind, neither didst remember the latter end of it, the latter days. Therefore, hear now this, thou art given to pleasures. America is nothing but pleasures, man. I'm in Sin City, and that's all these people are caring about. But the mirth is dwindling, man. You got certain that were complaining about the F1, and then you had others saying, well, shit, this city is dying, man. It needs F1 more than F1 needs it. It says, that dwellest carelessly, that says in thy heart, I am. And another way that they dwell as carelessly is because they go around fuck on it, effing with everyone, thinking that they're not going to get any type of repercussions, as if, they got a magical force field, But that even if they did have a magical force field, which they don't, they're trying to build a golden dome, they're not going to be able to stop judgment. They're not going to be able to undo prophecy, right? It says, I am and none else beside me. They view themselves as the sole rulers of the earth. You see what they're doing to the contenders, the up and comers, like China and Russia. They try to compromise them, right? And the main reason for that is because we're in Esau's blessing. It says, I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. And that's the mind state that they have. They don't think that they'll ever be defeated. But Esau, he can't ever have that mentality of never being conquered, because he's been conquered many times. His world is built on lies. And now those lies are being exposed to reveal who he really is. It says, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries. So America is built on witchcraft and sorceries, and for the great abundance of thy enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me, but now he's being exposed. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee, and thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. It's gonna be from coming from everywhere, man. As it says in the book of Job. It says, a mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And that's gonna also until when this society breaks down, man, he's gonna lose control. It's gonna be he's gonna barely get this new world order. But as soon as he gets ready to swallow the last bite, Most High gonna rain those missiles on his ass, man. It says, "And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know." Right? Because ultimately, going back to this article, which he said a lot in a few words, it says EU can no longer consider US an ally. Going back to how it's the bloody city, right? Nahum chapter 3, verse 2, it says, "The noise of a whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels and of the prancing horses and of the jumping chariots. The horsemen lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses." And this is what he did, taking over this land. It says, "Because of the multitude or the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot," going back to the word whore, "the mistress of witchcrafts that selleth nations," who's known to sell nations, "through her whoredoms, her lies, and families through her witchcrafts. Behold, I'm against thee, saith Yahweh of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face." When you lift up a woman's skirt, her privates are exposed and she's embarrassed. Her secrets, right? And that's what the Most High is doing with America. It says, "And I will show the nations thy nakedness and the kingdoms thy shame." So behind the scenes, these kingdoms are looking at America as a piece of shit. "And I will cast abominable filth upon thee and make thee vow and will set thee as a gazing stock," because eventually America is going to get wiped off the face of the earth by thermonuclear missiles and the chariots. Isaiah chapter 47, verse 12, "Stand now with thy enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit. If so be thou mayest prevail." Which, this is going to be a case study, on how stupid this damn devil is, not understanding that the Most High controls both good and evil, right? This is Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. It says, "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil." So even on the left-hand side, the Heavenly Father has full control. So the Most High is going to cut access of the left-hand side to Esau, going back to Isaiah the 19th chapter, right? 14th verse. It says, "Yahweh have mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt," which modern day Egypt is America, because Egypt in the scriptures is just an allegory for the house of bondage. That land that is called Egypt today was not the original name. The name changed over time. The original name was Martazarian in the Hebrew, or Mizraim. It says, "To err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit." And you see how America is going to err in every work thereof because they got an idiot in office. Narrow Trump. Going back to Isaiah chapter 47, verse 13. I guess I'm playing Hebrew ping pong. It says, "Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee," which they're not going to be able to do. "Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame," which this is a thermonuclear fire. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. And that lines up with those merchants standing afar off. So going back to Revelation chapter 17, verse 14 again, it says, These shall make war with the Lamb, which is Yahweh Shai, who the world enemy calls Jesus Christ, and the Lamb shall overcome them, which you already went into that. That's the war in heaven. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful, which are the elect. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, going back to the first verse, where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, and the 10 horns, which is NATO and the EU, those uh, or for lack of better words, those same vassal states coming back as what they are today, which is NATO and the EU, which I believe it was the ECC agreement, the Treaty of Rome. It says, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. So America's allies are going to hate it and shall make her desolate and naked. They're going to shoot those missiles on it or on America, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For the Most High have put it in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, which that's exactly what they all came in agreement to have a conglomerate until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. And that's why America is deemed the number one superpower. And you see how it tries to dictate world affairs, especially with Trump's ass in office. Oh yeah, the article. So I'm gonna read a little bit of this article. It says the EU can no longer consider the U.S. an ally after Washington submitted a draft peace plan directly to Kyiv, thus sidelining the bloc. Former EU foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell has stated, and those European nations, they're right in the front of the barrel. They're at close gunpoint range. They what do you call close quarters? America is protected by a massive sea. I should say seemingly, because those missiles are going to hit this place. It says Washington presented Kyiv with the proposal last week, giving it until this Thursday to respond. Western European nations, blindsided by the plan, have rejected any agreement that would cross Kyiv's proclaimed red lines, including its bid to join NATO and the question of territorial concessions. In a series of X posts on Monday, Borrell said U.S. President Donald Trump's Ukraine peace plan had exposed what he called the failure of the EU's appeasement strategy toward the U.S. president, arguing that the bloc's concessions on military spending, tariffs, and energy supplies had achieved nothing. Trump's United States can no longer be considered an ally of Europe, which is not even consulted on matters affecting its own security, Borrell claimed, adding that Europe must acknowledge this shift in U.S. policy and respond accordingly. That's all I got to read on that. So They usually have the dramatic music, dun, 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 and then you're all on the edge of your seat thinking what's gonna happen next. And then they hit you with that black screen and them white letters to be continued. So with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm gonna say shalom.